What's up, everyone? I'm Don Ferguson, and welcome back to another episode of Something New here in the Teeqlife Basement Bar. But this is the interview series. And for the interview series, we are bringing back one of my friends from a great distillery, Adam Edwards, digital brand ambassador for Rabbit Hole Distillery. Welcome back to the Teeqlife Basement Bar, sir.
Thank you, Don. How are you, man?
I'm hanging in there, man. Like we're filming in January, and people keep talking about dry January, and I don't really know what it is. Like, does that mean no rain?
Yeah, whatever. Get it out of here, dry
Yeah.
January.
I don't know what that even means. So we're just gonna move on. But I think it has something to do with liquor. They're crazy. But welcome back, man. Appreciate you taking the time. And for this one, we talked about it on the last time. We joined each other in our respective areas. You're in a different place, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But we are trying Derringer. And this is an expression that all of my friends have been telling me about, just to keep it real. And what's really interesting is, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm not, I read the label, it is aged in sherry casks.
It is. Yeah, it is a wheated bourbon. So mash bill on this is 68% corn, 18% wheat, and 14% malted barley. It's generally aged about 5.5 to 7 years, somewhere in that range. So it's one of our oldest whiskeys. We take that bourbon, then we finished it in Pedro Ximénez sherry casks from Montilla, Spain, for anywhere about 6 months, usually, sometimes as little as 3, sometimes as much as 9, but usually around 6 months of that secondary finish to kind of round it out.
Now, it's interesting you said that, because a lot of the research that I did, it was undisclosed how long they were actually, like, the sherry casks were being used.
Mm-hmm.
So you already answered one of my questions. That just means more time to drink. And with that, this is a 93 proof. So I'm going to do a pour. I have not tried this yet whatsoever, and I'm going to let it breathe a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I can already smell it, man. Wow. Wow.
I know, that's sherry right away, right? It's awesome.
It really jumps out. And Spain, so the Pedro Ximénez, that is that a type of grape from what I understand?
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the sweetest grapes on the planet. So it has like the most amount of bricks, that you can have in a grape. And they do everything. So when they make the sherry and they ferment it and store it in the casks, they do it all solera aging. So like that inverted pyramid. And
Okay.
So all the wine up here, that kind of new make wine up here, is it flows through the bottom to the bottom of the rack there, that solera rack. It's feeding all the yeast that lives in there, and
Okay.
that yeast covers the sherry and keeps it from oxidizing. And so I can't remember what the actual Spanish word is, but it means fainting cask, is when that yeast starts to, if it doesn't get enough food, it'll start to pull away, and then exposes the sherry and it oxidizes, no good anymore.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So sherry, from my recollection, and I guess we're going down the rabbit hole already. We're just talking. So it's typically kind of dry. It can be really relatively sweet. And what I've read, like in Wine Enthusiast magazine, there's a big surge of people that are drinking sherry again.
Yeah.
So it became really
Sherry's
popular.
really coming back. Mm-hmm.
Did that actually lead to the choice of using a sherry barrel to finish this?
Not really. Where this came from, we kind of talked about it last time we were on, was that Kaveh, our founder, Kaveh Zamanian, he was a Scotch drinker before he met Heather, the girl from Kentucky, turned him into a bourbon drinker, and he loved sherried scotches. So that's a really big thing in the Scotch world, right, is finishing those scotches in sherry casks. So he wanted to kind of marry those two. And in fact, the name, Derringer, you pronounce it, Derringer like the gun, but if you look at the spelling, it's spelled Dareringer. And I don't think this is really the reason, but I like to say it, is that Heather dared Kaveh to open a damn bourbon distillery, and he did. But she has been his ringer, right? And she's been in his corner, really showing him how to do this as a Kentuckian. And so this bottle is really about that relationship between Heather and Kaveh. That idea of, she brought him over from the Scotch world, and he sort of takes some of those little notes of the old world whiskey making, approaches it from a new world bourbon kind of standpoint. It just marries the two. So this bottle is really about love. And we're almost to February, so it's a good time to do this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that's I always love the backstories behind a brand, behind a spirit, and that it just it ties in so well because I did notice Derringer was spelled very different, and I did think of the gun. I was thinking back, when I first cracked it, I looked at it and I'm like, man, Derringer, that's like the gun, but I didn't think that that's why or what it was named after. I just figured it wasn't.
No,
Now,
we really. I think this one is just. It's all about love. That's every time I hear anything about Derringer and I think about the bottle. It's just about love, right?
yeah, and the bottles, like I said, are classic. On this one, it
Hmm.
does have, the description of how it's finished in those barrels. And we talked about it before, is that the barrels that you guys use for your whiskey bourbon is charred, well, toasted and
Hmm.
then charred. And this one, if I'm not mistaken, it was a higher char level than most of the other bourbons, level
Level
4.
4. Yeah, so everything else is a level 3 when they char it. This is a little bit more. Level 4 creates a little bit more of the kind of barrel spice. So it
Hmm.
matches up against the sweet and tangy flavors that both the sherry and the wheated bourbon are going to bring. So that way you're just balancing that flavor profile a little bit more.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's actually what I was thinking. The reason why to go a heavier char is it's going to blend and mesh very well with that sherry, which, like I said, some sherries are sweet, some are a little tangy. It just all depends. So now that you're already kind of giving me a hint that it might be a little sweet, that char just, really, really blends extremely well. So I have a pour. I don't know if you do. Yep, you got it. So I've been letting it breathe. And the first thing I want to talk about is the color, which is truly just a really nice, it's almost like a brand new copper penny. It just has this illustrious sheen to it. With this being 93 proof, like the tiers, the legs are dripping elegantly, and it's all like in a sequence. So it's not like one or two here, very well balanced. And the aromas just really, as soon as I crack this open, it just poured out. So,
Yeah.
mm, wow, that is the aromas is fantastic. And for those playing along at home, we'll just describe a little bit of what I'm smelling. And it's very light, it's sweet, it's fruity. It almost feels like, I would say, like, well, brown sugar for sure, but almost like some dried cherries or dried plums. Um, I'm picking up almost like a raisin-esque. I don't know, is that potentially from the sherry casks?
Absolutely. No, you're right on the money with that. The sort of that dried fruit and raisin, that's definitely coming from the sherry cask.
Yeah.
The caramel and brown sugar, that's like the bourbon influence
Yeah.
there. Although Pedro Ximénez sherry is very sweet and it does kind of give you some of those richer, almost marshmallowy tones, right?
Okay.
But I mean,
Mhm.
I think the thing it's, when you start talking about flavor development, where these two kind of stitch together, the bourbon and the sherry, there's this kind of ribbon there of like nutty and earthy flavors that sort of stitch them together. And so that's where I kind of can like delineate the difference between one barrel to the other, or some of those like dark chocolate and almond notes that sort of stitch together like the brown sugar and the
Yep.
raisin and cherry.
No, it's very delightful. And one of the things that they absolutely love is, the ethanol vapors, the alcohol vapors that seem to permeate up, especially when you're using a Rabbit Hole Distillery Glencairn. But it is one of those things like, with some cheaper spirits, you get a lot of that alcohol. You get the vapors, and they really, I like to say, punch me in the eyeballs and make my eyes just swell and tear. And I'm telling you, at 93, this is so evenly balanced. It's really ridiculous, and I'm not getting any of that whatsoever. Fantastic.
Excellent.
All right, so I'm going in
Love
for my
this.
first taste, and this is exciting because I haven't tried it and everybody's telling me about it. So cheers, my friend. Salud.
Cheers, Dodd.
Mm. Oh, you get some baking spices in there. There is some baking spices. It is a little dry, so I'm getting like a dried oak. I'm totally getting that fruit, a cherry for sure. Let me see. I got to go in again to, I don't want to miss anything. Some raisin flavor. I'm picking up the nuttiness, almost like almond, and then on top of it, like man, I don't know, like if you go to a game or something like that, and they have the honey roasted or the sugar roasted almonds, something like that. That's what I'm picking up, like some dark fruits, and there's a little bit of orange zest, which is really fantastic, man.
Yeah, you're picking up a lot of those, what I call like the charcuterie plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like the earthy and the sweet and the salty and a little bit of spice, like kind of all those little bits that all add up to like a really, really nice sort of smorgasbord. That's Derringer. That's Derringer all the way.
This is actually fantastic. And what I was worried about, to be honest, was the sherry cask. Were they going to make it too sweet? I'm not the biggest sweet drinker when it comes to, a whiskey or a bourbon, a tequila, to where they add agave into it and it just makes it so overly sweetened. This is very pleasant. It's mild. It's definitely not as sweet. But what's great about it is on the back end, even though I'm getting those baking spices, there's not a lot of heat, pepper, burn, whatever people want to call it. It is very nice. This is a solid sipper that, wow. Well, I know on the tag there's a gold medal, so I'm sure this is definitely won some awards. There's no doubt about it. But this is actually fantastic.
Yeah, we're really happy with all the awards that this gets, but I will tell you, as an ambassador, for me, it's just what people say about it. That's the award, right? Like, what is it that people say about it? How do people enjoy it? And you're right. Like, you think that this is going to be overly sweet, but that's the whole point of us doing those really small batches, right? 15 barrels or less in every batch, so that we know we're never oversharing something, because you can overshare this very easily. Very easily.
Absolutely. And that's funny because that was one of my questions I wanted to ask, is I read that this is a very limited production run, that it's only to 15 barrels. Now that's 15 barrels per year, correct?
Oh, no. That's the batching. So every time we kind of start doing a new bottling run on something, and that's all of our products, we do 15 barrels or less like per batch. Yeah. Because we really want to make sure that, we've done it before very early on. We created some Derringer that you saw it in the bottle. It was so dark. It was so dark, and it had been oversharing a little bit. And so what we learned is that we have to continuously taste and make sure that we're not going over or under, because every barrel is different. Whether or not it's the bourbon barrel or the sherry cask, every barrel is different, and you have to continuously taste to make sure that you're right in the middle of where your flavor profile needs to be.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what I did is, as you've seen, I changed a glass. I threw in some whiskey rocks, to kind of cool it down. I typically don't open it up with water. But maybe you can talk about that, like how much that changes the flavor profile. But this, as I threw in the whiskey rocks, I'll tell you, like, this is something I can drink straight neat. I don't need to chill it. I don't need to cool it. Now, I will try it one day with, a couple of droplets of water, but on the rocks, I don't know. It's fantastic. It truly is.
Yeah. I think this is really great neat. I will say that if you have any dark chocolate with this, if you take a bite of dark chocolate, this tastes like a cherry cordial, like all the cherry notes and chocolate notes come out. But if you got a dark wrap cigar, like a Maduro wrap, this is unbelievable. One of the greatest days of my life, Don, was sitting out in a field with Cave, talking about the future of Rabbit Hole, eating Mexican food, smoking, like, I think it was a Romeo Julieta, like dark wrap Romeo Julieta, and drinking Derringer. That was like one of the greatest days of my life. For that reason, Derringer is like my go-to now because I have such great memories with it.
Well, I mean, that actually sounds like a fantastic day. I mean,
Yeah, it was
really,
pretty awesome.
That is. Now, what is funny is the more that this is sat and chilled, I'm getting more cherry. So I am getting more of that dried cherry. So I can completely understand. I love dark chocolate, and I think if you do like a very high quality dark chocolate paired with a good whiskey, good bourbon, good aged tequila, it changes the dynamic completely. It really is a game changer.
Yeah, this one pairs really, really well with that. And we talk a lot about pairing our different lines, you know, with food. And here in the, you know, I kind of said charcuterie board earlier, like this is the perfect one. If you've got a nice charcuterie board with, like, you know, Spanish ham and manchego and, you know, honey and raisins and chocolate, like those sort of, and almonds, like you put all that together and then you're drinking this up, man, it's a good night. I'm telling you.
Oh, it's a fantastic,
really good night, Doc.
The other thing that I like about this is that, you know, whiskey bourbon, we know the world to be, you know, somewhat male dominated. So this is fantastic. I love it. But I know my wife would actually like this, even though, you know, it's a higher proof than what she typically does drink. It's smooth. It has a lot of great flavors. It's got a nice, rich, subtle sweetness. So I'm sure that it appeals to all markets, you know, and I think that's what's really interesting is more women get into whiskey and bourbon drinking. This one can appeal right across the board where couples can equally share this.
That's why I'm sitting right here. That is why I chose tonight to have this as my backdrop, this piece of art. So this installation behind me, I'm on top of the distillery up in Overlook, our rooftop bar. And this is called Movement by Kelty Ferris. And one really great thing about this piece of art is it's obviously prints of people's bodies, like pressed up against the canvas. And it's very hard to tell who is male, who is female. Spoiler alert, it's all Kelty, it's all female. But the point of it is that you don't really know because it doesn't really matter. We're all the same at some point, and we all have our differences, but we also compare with each other as well. And so this piece, I think, really kind of drove that point home that this, you know, bourbon or that bourbon or this whiskey, it doesn't really matter if you're male or female. There's going to be people out there that really like that. This one, I will say, out of our line, this is the one that my wife will drink because she likes like wine. She likes sweet kind of red wine, and she really does like sherry. So she's crazy about this one. But that's really the reason I wanted to sit in front of Kelty's piece, because I think that really drove home that point that you just made.
Yeah, no, I love the backdrop, you know, colorful, it stands out, you know, and it's also a conversation starter. And, you know, there's so many conversation starters here. This is a conversation starter, no doubt about it, because I think that women who are kind of turned off when it comes to whiskeys or bourbon, this can start to change their mind. And that's really what it's all about, is opening up somebody's mind to be able to appreciate something different and something new.
Absolutely.
Thanks. And, you know, just to let everybody out there know, please follow us on social media. Follow Rabbit Hole Distillery on social media. They have a lot of great content. Subscribe to the Teeqlife YouTube channel and subscribe to our media partner, Tequila and Spirits Magazine, who has a free digital online subscription. So we will see you next time, buddy. Take care.
Cheers, Don.
Cheers.